26 knots down the Eagle. 106 to interval is a Rhino at 5. Sure, sir. 07 on glide path on course 1 mile. Sure, sir. 07 on glide path on.
In April 2006, as part of the expansion of coalition operations in Afghanistan, a British battle group led by the 16th Air Assault Brigade and centred around the 3rd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, deployed to Helmand province. The aims of the deployment, as laid out by Secretary for Defence John Reid, was to support reconstruction efforts within Helmand and protect them from Taliban activities, whose strength was estimated to have numbered no more than 500 fighters. This figure, however, was significantly underestimated, as later intelligence showed that there were at least 3,000 fighters in the region in early 2006, which was over 3 times the fighting strength of the British battle group. Commanding the 3rd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment at the time, was Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Tootle, who explains, "Even if our operations could be limited to the region around the key cities as we planned, it was still a huge area for the limited number of troops that I would have at my disposal." Matters were made complicated when the governor for Helmand province requested that British troops deploy into the northern towns to prevent them becoming Taliban strongholds, leading to A Company of the 3rd Battalion deploying to Sangin on the 21st of June. Remaining here for a little over a week, A Company rotated out with B Company in early July, prior to returning to the town at the end of the month. On both occasions, A Company faced almost daily attacks by the Taliban, with author David Reynolds commenting that A Company's second stay in Sangin lasted 35 days, of which 31 days witnessed contacts with the Taliban as the situation deteriorated and the fighting grew more intense. One such contact took place on the 20th of August 2006, when A Company's 1st Platoon headed to an area just north of Sangin to conduct a routine patrol. Supported by 2 50 cal mounted Land Rovers, the platoon set off on their mission, with 2 sections moving out to cover the flanks, whilst the 3rd advanced up the centre. Commanding the section on the right flank was Corporal Bryan Budd, who had only joined A Company 2 months earlier, having previously served in the Pathfinder platoon. Leading his section through high dense vegetation, Corporal Budd soon identified 3 Taliban positions directly to his front, when one of the Land Rovers on the left flank was ambushed by another enemy force. Immediately on hearing the outbreak of gunfire just a couple of 100 metres away to his left, Corporal Bryan Budd ordered his men to follow his lead in an assault on the Taliban positions he had identified moments earlier. However, no sooner had they set off did they too come under heavy fire, forcing the paratroopers to get to ground and begin returning fire, among them Lance Corporal Paul Roberts. I dropped onto one knee and I engaged the enemy with my rifle. My rifle at that time was set to automatic and I fired 2 to 3 short bursts. In the ensuing engagement, Lance Corporal Roberts was struck in one of his shoulders, followed in quick succession by 2 other paratroopers, one of whom was hit in his body armour vest, whilst the other incurred wounds to his face and one of his arms. Pulled into cover, the 3 were checked over for their wounds, prior to the section's second in command giving the order to withdraw into a more favourable position that enabled the wounded to be evacuated. As his men began to execute this withdrawal, Corporal Bryan Budd decided to assault the enemy positions alone, grabbing his SA-80, moving out from cover and charging through the vegetation. On the other side of the field, he stormed into one of the enemy dugouts, where he engaged and killed 3 Taliban fighters before being knocked onto the ground as he was hit by a stray bullet. Meanwhile, the rest of his section had managed to disengage from the contact and transfer the wounded to a nearby British aid post, where it became apparent that Corporal Budd was missing in action. As a result, 1st Platoon's 3rd section, which had been initially advancing up the centre, switched over to the right and moved forward in an effort to locate the corporal, but were likewise engaged by withering enemy fire and suffered 3 wounded within several minutes. Back in Sangin, news of the unfolding situation began to reach the rest of A Company, who drew together a composite platoon made up of paratroopers, raw engineers, snipers and military policemen to go out, reinforce 1st Platoon and find Corporal Bryan Budd. Coming in from a different flank, this makeshift platoon made contact with the Taliban and similarly became pinned down, leading to a request for immediate air support. Unfortunately, the close nature of the fighting ruled out a bombing run by fighter jets, leading to a couple of Apache helicopters being dispatched to the area. On arrival over Sangin, the Apaches began targeting the Taliban positions, thus opening the way for elements of A Company to move forward, secure the enemy's strong points, and locate Corporal Bryan Budd, who was found seriously wounded in the Taliban dugout, yet single-handedly secured. Lifted onto the shoulders of one of the British paratroopers, Corporal Budd was evacuated to the regimental aid post, where, sadly, he was pronounced as killed in action shortly after arriving.